Welcome to the Indie Pub, a laid-back interview show dedicated to the world of self and indie publishing. I'm your host, Jay Rushing, author of the self-published fantasy noir novel Radio, and a beverage buff with a passion for deep dives and good times. Every 2 weeks, a guest will step into the pub with a publishing-related topic and a favorite drink for us to explore and enjoy. Whether you want to sharpen your craft, snag a new cocktail recipe, or just have a laugh, there's always a seat and a full glass waiting for you at the Indie Pub. Welcome to the Indie Pub. Today's guest is Lindsey Grant, a NaNoWriMo veteran, author of the memoir Sleeps with Dogs, the upcoming writer's workbook Ready, Set, Memoir, and co-author of Ready, Set, Novel. She's here with us today to discuss NaNoWriMo and its relationship with indie and self-publishing. But before we dive in, tell us a bit about what we're drinking here in the pub today.
So I am enjoying a Negroni, nice and bitter, mixed by my husband, who is our resident bartender.
Nice. So question, because the Negroni is one of my favorite drinks ever. And I'm always curious because I'm a bit of a pyro. When you make your Negronis, do you do the flamed orange or not?
No.
Oh.
No, he's very precise about the ratio and the type of liquor used, but he was funny. He popped his head in right before he gave me my cocktail, and he said, be sure to tell him that we don't have any orange in it or orange rind.
Okay, that's it. That's perfectly fair and perfectly fine. I'm curious, what are your go-to ingredients for it?
So we use a really nice vermouth. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an Italian vermouth. No martini, Rossi.
Yeah.
And Campari, of course. And then I prefer Bombay Sapphire. I have heard that some people have Beefeater, but we usually use the Bombay.
Yeah, I use why am I forgetting the name? There it is, Punta Mess as my vermouth. That's one of my favorites. And then obviously Campari. And then years and years ago, my wife and I did a gin off where we got a bunch and compared them because we thought, we want to know kind of what's our fancy go-to and what our, kind of everyday knockaround was. And good old Gordon's came out on top for the knockaround. Hey. So we felt pretty lucky with that because you can find it anywhere.
That's true.
Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of the flamed orange, mostly because I'm a bit of a pyro, and anything that lets me play with fire and drink is kind of awesome. So next time you get a shot, I highly recommend it.
All right. Well, I can see that the smoky and the bitter would be really nice together.
It's and just the fun, really. Mostly just the fun. Okay, tell us a bit about your background with NaNoWriMo and give us a little bit of a history of the program as a whole.
Sure. So I came to NaNoWriMo as my first job out of grad school, and I almost couldn't believe that it was a real thing. When I interviewed with them, I was kind of expecting it to be kind of a you got punked. But I sat down with the founder, Chris Beatty, and the only other hire, Tavia Stewart, who was the managing editor at the time. And when I came on, I was sort of a jack of all trades. I managed the office. I bought the toilet paper. I was the bookkeeper. And I also managed the volunteers that run the local chapters around the world. And they're the people with whom NaNoWriMo participants really have the in-person encounters with. So they're really, really crucial to the program so that it isn't just an online experience. So from 2008 until 2010, I sort of wore all those hats. And then Chris stepped up to executive director, to be full-time executive director, and I took over as program director of NaNoWriMo from him. And at the time that I came on, NaNoWriMo was still running Script Frenzy, and I don't know if you remember Script Frenzy.
I don't. Tell me a little more.
Yeah, so it was a NaNoWriMo-esque challenge for people writing screenplays or stage plays.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And it was awesome. And one of my best friends in the whole wide world ran that program until it ended because basically it needed to be sort of unto itself. It was really hard running both programs because it was almost like the revolving door of now it's Nano, now it's Script Frenzy.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is that in addition to the Young Writers program for NaNoWriMo, I, as program director, launched Camp NaNoWriMo. And so it's all under the same hat of writing a novel in a month, but it expands to when it's done and also who's doing it, so that there ample resources for elementary and high school age kids, and then also people who don't want to do it during the month of November.
Nice. And Camp Nano is coming up soon, right?
In April, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so very soon.
It's right around the corner, yeah. April and June.
Perfect. Okay, so NaNoWriMo is obviously for everyone, but how do you think it specifically impacted people in the Indian self-publishing world?
Yeah, so, I thought about this so much, and actually I spoke with someone else, well, Libby,
yeah,
a fellow wolf veteran herself, about this, because ultimately, whether it's in self-publishing or indie publishing or even in traditional publishing, the magic of Nano is that it gets people who may not otherwise feel empowered to writing.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I think is so magical about self-publishing and indie publishing, is that it is outside of the sphere of this sort of cloistered, clubby feeling of traditional publishing. And the fact that there is this engine, this story engine of Nano, driving all of these people whose stories and voices might not otherwise be heard into this writing realm, with the resources and with the encouragement to not just write their story, but then to go on, edit it, and get it out there in whatever form they find best. But so many people, as you well know, decide that there's so many options now, whether it's a hybrid self-publishing or it's purely self-publishing, so many smaller presses that they can choose from. And it's so incredible that what the net gain really is more story, more quality, more voices.
Yeah, it's incredible to me just how many people I've known who have taken part. I'm very good at thinking I might do it in August, and then maybe making like a little bit of a plan in September, and then December rolls around and I'm like, well, there's next year. That's my skill when it comes to Nano. But one day I will do it.
And be joined by so many other people who've probably honestly been in the same boat as you. In fact, my one job here in Switzerland, I think I got hired on the strength of Nano, because she said exactly, the hiring manager that I ended up working for, she said exactly what you said, which is, I've been following this event for years. One year I'm gonna do it. And she wrote graphic novels.
I had a good friend of mine, I think she made it this year. I think she hit, I want to say 52 or 53, made it just over the line.
Nice.
Good. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the cocktail, and let's dive into the taste and the smell, what notes you get out of it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I might be going a little bit on memory here, because just today, in terrible timing, I have a cold, and so I can't smell very well. But I enjoy this cocktail every single week. Every Friday night we have pizza night, and so I'm very familiar, with the cocktail. And I love. So my theory is Negronis can veer. They can be perfect. They can veer just on the side of sweet or just on the side of bitter. And actually, I prefer mine just on the side of bitter. I know that it's supposed to be that perfect balance, but I really like a cocktail that isn't cloying.
I 100% agree.
I mean, this has an aftertaste, but it isn't, it's not sickly the way that some cocktails can be.
Yeah, I find a Negroni, if it's too sweet, it just starts to nudge into cough syrup territory a little bit, and that's not so good. But yeah.
Well, I'm not proud to say I dabbled with the non-alcoholic Negroni, which is surely a sin, and it tasted like a sin. It was cough syrup.
What's involved? What would the ingredients be?
So if you can believe it, there is a non-alcoholic vermouth.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, it is weird, and
it's kind of bitter grape juice then.
Not terrific. Correct. Yeah. And non-alcoholic Campari as well. And then I don't know how familiar you are with this actually quite popular new phenomena of like herbal non-alcoholic gin. And the makers are very clear that you can't think of it like a gin substitute, because if you go in looking for the gin taste, that's not what you're going to get.
Yeah.
that it is a very nuanced drink and it's a great alternative to an alcoholic drink, but that you need to sort of go in with an open mind. And so I tried it. I made it with the same ratio of ingredients. But I think you just have to have the drink. For me. I mean, for me.
Was the non-alcoholic gin, was it water-based or vinegar-based or?
No, I'll have to look up the ingredients, and there are a number of different kinds. I've tried two, and actually they're pretty readily available here. I didn't have to look too hard, but I think it's just infused water.
Oh, okay. So it's just an herbal water then.
Mm-hmm.
Spa water. That's healthy. See, healthy drinking. There we go.
I should really know more about it. I didn't love it, so we didn't keep it for that long.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so with Nano, what have you found to be your favorite aspects of the program? You've been involved for a number of years now. What are the things that really have stood out to you as either being valuable or what's really brought you a lot of joy? And anything that just makes it special to you.
Mm-hmm. So I talked a little bit about how I love that it is designed for truly everybody, everywhere, anyone of any writing background. This is not just for the MFA, the grant winner, or, the resident writer. That if you have a story to tell, or even if you don't, if you just want to see where it takes you, whether you plan in advance with this thing that you've sort of carried around with you for ages, or you're just being spontaneous, everybody is welcome, and it makes for so much fun.
Yeah.
It takes this sort of seriousness of being a writer, and, it just opens it up to every possibility that anyone could ever think of. And I love that spirit so much, that there really isn't a right way and a wrong way, or rules, that everything's just sort of thrown out the window. And you end up having what sort of seems like a month-long literary lock-in. Like, everybody just comes as they are, and, see what kind of mischief you can get into.
Random question. This just dawned on me. I was thinking, because the idea that Nano is for everyone is such a great kind of unifying idea. But I've always wondered, is it only in English language, or is it set up in a way where anybody writing in any language can participate?
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, anybody in any language, because ultimately, I mean, kind of like the brilliance and also the surprise of it is that nobody sees this. Nobody sees your 50,000 words. Nobody's checking it. I mean, yes, there is a word count validator, but truly it's just a way of you saying, like, well, here's my novel, like, I wrote it so that you can get your digital badge. I mean, it's kind of like running a marathon. Like, nobody's going to know if you, like, cheat or whatever. You'll know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's truly any language. And in fact, when I was there, we were just getting started on site translation to make the website more accessible to people in other countries, so that they could access the resources. But in terms of just pen to paper or typing, whatever language you want to write in, that's up to you.
Excellent. So you mentioned one of the great things about Nano is that it's really kind of a no holds barred, come at it with your own style and your own technique and what works for you. But what are some of the pitfalls or mistakes you've noticed writers make when they're trying to either approach Nano or in the midst of it?
So exactly what you said about sort of doing it the right way. What should I be doing, and is there a right way to do it? I mean, I think so much of the beauty of it is actually getting to know yourself as a writer and what works for you. I mean, are you somebody who does well planning in advance and outlining, and having sort of a scene list that you're going to hit? Are you somebody that writes in the morning or the evening? Do you write well alone or in a group? Do you like music? Do you not like music? Are you prone to writer's block, or do you free write first? it's sort of, establishing your style and the way that you do it. And of course, there are pep talks and there are tons of tips on the website, but I almost think of those as ways of overcoming doubt or that inner critic, that it isn't saying like, well, this is how you should do it. Step 1, sit down. Step 2, what have you, that it's more, don't listen to those doubts that have kept you from writing up until now, because they will creep in even as you're writing. Keep going. Don't focus on quality. Don't be unrealistic about your finished product. Just get those ideas down on the page at whatever cost, like dirty house, dirty kids, dirty pets.
How has either working with Nano or participating yourself changed your own process?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I am an editing maniac. I love it. I love structural edits. I love line edits. And it was really cool for me the first time I realized there could be a first draft that was so wildly imperfect that it really was a way to not just get down like rough ideas, but even writing things that won't end up in your story, but inform your story, if that makes any sense. Like writing outside of the bounds of your narrative, but about things that will inform you about your character, getting to know them deeply. Yeah. And I think that when you're on a deadline like that, where you're like, whoa, what am I going to write today? You kind of go into these crazy places and you find at the end, oh, okay, like I can shave all of this, but you know your story, you know your characters so well because you went there with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that would be a big help for me. I am definitely the edit as you go type.
Okay.
By the time I'm done with the first draft, the mostly unedited chapters are draft 3, and then there are other chapters are draft 7, others are draft 10. So I could definitely use the kick in the pants to just go forward and get it done.
Yeah, without like shame or any kind of self-editing, which to be totally honest, it was hard for me too. I very much had to curb that instinct of like getting the dialogue just so, and like making it sound authentic on the first pass and stuff like that.
So what would you say to somebody who is gearing up for NaNoWriMo, whether it's, kind of the early stages of planning or the actual kind of prep right before November hits? What would be some of the recommendations you would have?
In addition to really drilling down into what works for them and really like honoring that about themselves, know thyself in terms of what works for you, and have sort of your schedule ready for that. Let people know, hey, I'm going to take this time in the morning. I really need this amount of time. And I guess you call that setting yourself up for success, just sort of getting things in place. But that also includes in terms of approaching your story, whether you do want to lead with the outline and have that in place beforehand, if that's sort of your guiding line through the month, or if you're really going at it like, let's just see what happens, and to not go in and second guess yourself once you've started. That however you want to do it is totally great. And again, there aren't any rules. Just do what feels really good for you, because it's hard enough to write every day, or to write however you want to do it. If you only write on the weekends, or if you write in like a huge burst and then take a couple days off, in whatever way getting to 50,000 words or however much you're going to write in a month looks like, really just going for that in the way that feels best to you.
Do you find that plotters or pantsers, one or the other, tend to have a better go at NaNoWriMo, or do you think it shakes out pretty evenly in the end?
That's such a good question. And do you know, I don't think we ever put that on a survey.
Oh,
And
interesting. Okay.
I'm so curious if they did after I left. I want to ask them because I would love to know.
Yeah, I
If
could
like self-described one or the other got to the finish line more frequently.
I could see there being a case made for both.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see how the strengths of one or the other would lead there. You know, the pantsers, I tend to be a bit more of a pantser, and just that ability to, you know, pull it out of your brain and go. I think that kind of streamlined aspect could be good. Although then you also have the paralysis of what you've pulled out of your head actually being worth putting on the page.
But writing yourself into corners. I mean, that was my
absolutely.
experience.
Oh, God,
When I tried it both ways, and I just got so lost in the woods if I didn't have that plan ahead of me.
Yeah. I have some friends who are hardcore plotters, just everything dialed out, bullet points everywhere, and that also having that path, you're basically following a path at that point. I could see that being a huge benefit, but I can't. I signpost, I call it, where I think of it as kind of like, you know, try to have a beginning and an ending, and, you know, 2 or 3 twists, and I'll write from one spot to the next, and then decide if what's left still makes sense, and then if not, I can change course. But the idea of actually, you know, bullet point after bullet point after bullet point is terrifying.
Huh.
I would like to be able to do it, but I don't think that I actually could pull it off. At least not pull it off.
I find this so fascinating that every person you talk to has this sort of, I mean, for you, bullet points are terrifying. For me, not having that, to me, it feels like a safety net.
Yeah.
And it's so specific to the person. I mean, and that's true. That's why, like, I feel like there can't be any should, because, you know, if you try and do something the way somebody, I'm sure that there are vocations in this world. I'm sure surgery, for example, you have to follow instructions.
At least you know what they do.
But yeah, for writing, I do think, a bit, you just have to sort of figure out your own Bible, your own methods.
Yeah. Say it's November 12th, and you meet up with somebody who is just deep in the throes of Nano. What sort of advice would you give them there? And I would imagine anybody in the middle of NaNoWriMo on November 12th is going to be a bit frazzled, whether in a good way or a bad way. So what pep talk would you give them?
So I feel like in the middle of Nano, you're sort of in that place where you realize, like, oh God, maybe this isn't so fun anymore. Or maybe I had these really lofty goals, like I'm going to blow it out of the water. I'm going to write 100,000 words. Or I think there has to be a reckoning where you say, you know what? Everything I write is more than I would have otherwise. I'm still in it, and I'm still working on this, and maybe shucking some of those expectations you had in the beginning is good. It's a good thing because it helps you keep going.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the way that you thought you were going to, but you're still working at it. And like I had said before, I think sometimes you do get lost or mired, or whatever way that you're approaching your novel, you just sort of are stuck. And that's when I think, too, that checking in with the community can help, or you just come up with some tricks and tools of your own. One thing that I like to do is play the what if game with my character. Maybe I don't know my character well enough, and so I take the time to almost warm up writing by playing some sort of game where I write a what if scenario with my character. And it serves 2 purposes: that I sort of get in their mindset and I sort of flesh out, maybe a hypothetical situation, but I'm also just at the computer typing.
Yeah. And
that can be the hardest thing to do. You don't feel like it, you're tired, whatever. You've got a deadline or work something or other that you're thinking about, you're preoccupied. But if you can sort of trick yourself into writing every day, you'll keep going. You'll be there. Oh, I'm already in my chair. I'm already typing. And then you sort of warm up and find your flow.
Yeah. It seems kind of like running. It's like, you get kind of that midpoint. You got a cramp in your side, and you have, how am I going to get to the end? How am I going to make my body work so that I can finish? I could see that kind of a mental process similar to that
It's so true. I know. I love the exercise tips, where they say if you leave your clothes out and if you just put your shoes on, like you're already that much closer. And so if you're already typing something, even if it's kind of nothing, you're there and it'll come.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just shockingly easy to talk yourself out of something.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard this, but so it may be complete BS, but somewhere I heard that when it comes to creative tasks of really any kind, there's typically a 20-minute warm-up period for your brain before you finally settle in to kind of the flow of it.
Okay.
And I think about that a lot because writing's not an easy thing for me. Like, I'm not one of those people who, can sit down in the morning, crack my knuckles and get going. It's kind of a long slog over coffee, just trying to get the oomph together for it. But I have noticed that there is that point when I've slid into it and it finally starts to flow. Anyway, it's similar to running, where you're, all you want to do is pretend you have something in your shoe for the first few steps.
Right. I've really damaged my knee.
Yeah. This is clearly not healthy. I should probably stop. So how have you found that Nano has changed over the years, both for the program itself, but maybe also for how people approach it?
Sure. Wow. In so many ways. It was so scrappy. I mean, so scrappy. And it has gotten so sophisticated.
And how many years has it been around now?
So it was founded in 1999.
Okay.
So they celebrated, 20 years in 2019.
Nice.
Yeah, it's wild. I haven't participated in a while. I've always kept in touch with them and followed the programs, but I haven't written actually using the word count validator or using the new website that they've created. But they have, so I don't know if you participated in the years when the site breaking was just part of the fun. NaNoWriMo would start and the site would go down hard because so many people were hitting it. And it, on the inside, it was really stressful, but it was also, in a really weird way, like it was kind of an honor. Like so many people wanted to come to the party. And those days are gone. Yeah. No more site outages. I mean, it's like baby grew up.
Yeah.
But it's so cool to see something. And I wasn't even there in the very, very beginning. I mean, Chris Beatty was, running this out of his apartment at one point and like printing T-shirts that lived on a bookshelf in his living room. And there's sort of like a legend to it of the early days, and then sort of the middle where it was, rough and fun. And like I say, it was just still very much like a grassroots effort. And it's still, I mean, it's shocking how much they do with as small a staff as they have, but it's really beautiful also to see how much they are doing on a nonprofit budget with, I mean, they're still in the same office that they've been in since, I guess it was 2010.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, they haven't grown massively. But it's just by virtue of, the march of time, they've had to change, and there's a lot of efforts to make the website accessible and to make sure that the forums are incredibly inclusive and that there is no trace of any kind of discrimination and bullying. And all of these things are incredibly important to running this event because it has to be a safe space that is accessible to everyone. And so there's no like assuming that it's all okay. They're really on it. So yeah, it's
I
really
could imagine
incredible.
that's a tricky situation because on the one hand, you have this awesome thing that is just pulling writers out of the woodwork. But on the other hand, you're pulling writers out of the woodwork, and I'm sure the mix can be volatile at times.
Well,
But
yeah, and everyone's so passionate,
yeah,
and
yeah,
truly, like, people come from vastly different experiences to this party, and yeah, it's, I think, just so much work making sure that everybody feels good.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's important because if you don't feel good, you're not going to participate, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But the resources just continue to be so excellent, so refined, and they get input from amazing authors and support from amazing people, both local out in San Francisco, which in and of itself is, a very literary hub, but
Yeah.
also internationally. It continues to just attract terrific backers, people that no one knows, but also people that are really revered within the literary community.
And so how do you see the approach the writers themselves have taken to Nano? How has that changed from the early days to now? Or is that basically been the same?
I think I could be totally wrong about this. I think that it has largely stayed the same, which is really, really cool. And it's interesting because I do know some hardcore long-timers who truly have participated all these years. I mean, they knew about it early on and they've stuck with it. But the cool thing about it is that whether those people are there or not, there are always people coming to it. I mean, it's always changing. People maybe did it once and that was great, or maybe they do it 2 or 3 times, but it just kind of, it shifts, and their return participants, and there are new people. And even though it's sort of a dynamic mass, the spirit remains intact.
Yeah.
And that is really great, that it hasn't become, well, we talked about, the way that writing can feel so clubby. And
yeah.
I don't think there will ever be a day when it feels that way.
This may be putting you on the spot, so I hope I'm not. So apologies. But okay. I was just curious, are there can you give a couple examples of books that people might not know were born out of Nano?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much they push these names and how well people know them, but Water for Elephants, I think, is one that a lot of people know, maybe because of the movie or maybe because they read the book. But yeah, that Sarah Gruen has written many novels actually through Nano, and that was one of them. There are a lot of YA authors. I don't know if you know Cinder. It's been a really long time since it's sort of a retelling of the Cinderella story, but I think it's kind of sci-fi.
I think I've seen it. I haven't read it, but I think I've seen it before.
And then, do you know the author Hugh Howey?
Yes.
Howl was his book that he wrote.
Oh, okay.
With Nano. What else? There have been so many now, like hundreds, that have, gone on to be pretty well known. They maintain a list on the website. Those were big ones when I was there, and I'm trying to think if there are other ones that people might. Oh, Erin Morgenstern, Night Circus.
No way, really? I love that book. That was so good.
Yeah, such a beautiful book. And she's written another. I don't know if her second was through Nano or not, but she has remained a wonderful supporter of the program.
Nice.
So I think it's less putting me on the spot and more that I just have really bad memory at 9:30 at night.
No, that's great. I mean, those are some excellent examples. I think it's always good for people to see, if you're going to jump into a program, it's nice to kind of have those goalposts out there that it's like, well, if that book came out of this, then I'm excited to see what I can do with it.
It's so true. I mean, and these are people who truly run the spectrum of they had never done it before and this was a result, or maybe they'd done it a bunch of times and then finally one of their novels hit pay dirt. It runs the gamut.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump back to our cocktail for a second.
Okay, I still have some left.
Ooh, me too. So why did you pick this drink? Will be the first question, and then I'll just go in order. So why did you pick this drink?
Well, I feel like favorite cocktails have kind of gone through phases of my life, and before I moved to Switzerland, it was very much the Manhattan.
Yeah.
Loved a Manhattan.
Bourbon or rye?
Oh, bourbon.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
I was a bourbon person. Now I've been a rye convert, but every once in a while I slide back.
Yeah, I mean, that is not to say I don't enjoy a rye Manhattan, but given my druthers, I'd go bourbon.
Well,
but I love bourbon.
I have no preference or hold one over the other. I would just like to ask that question. I'm always curious. What's your go-to bourbon when you have one?
I really like Elijah Craig.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like your middle of the road. It's nice, but not too nice.
Yeah.
Easy drinking. I can just have it on its own.
I feel like that level's perfect for a Manhattan. Because if you're getting much fancier than that, it's hard to mix what you want to mix. But I feel like when you get the really nice stuff, it's like just drink it.
Yeah, just have it. It doesn't need any mixer. Yeah. And on the flip side, isn't the original Manhattan whiskey? Isn't it like Canadian Goose? What is it?
I could imagine.
I mean, I've had like what it's supposed to be. I hate supposed to, but really rotten. Not enjoyable.
Yeah, I used to know. I can't remember. I think you're right though. I think it was a Canadian of some sort.
Yeah. So, but in this phase of my life, I do really enjoy the Negroni, and maybe I don't know where this came from. I mean, in Switzerland, I don't know if this is your feeling, but my feeling is some of the best food you can get here is Italian food. We eat a lot of Italian food, and we've gone to Italy a lot. Yeah. And so I think just by virtue of sort of eating more of that cuisine and knowing more about the culture, maybe I've gravitated more towards their wines and their cocktails. We drink a lot of Italian wine, and it's something I'll really miss when we go back, because it's really fun sharing a border with that amazing country. I mean, I've missed going there this past year.
Yeah, for me, I'm from Washington State, and Switzerland's about 20% the size of Washington, and so it still messes with my head that what used to be driving through 2 counties is now driving through 3 versions of Swiss German and, into a completely different country. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's so true. I know Metro Atlanta is 5 million people. So, it's
so many.
It's about, 2/3 the size of the whole country. But
okay, so what is the right mood? What's the setting for this drink? So if someone's never had a Negroni before and they wanted to serve it at a party, is this what you would serve at a backyard barbecue? Is it something you would serve at a nice dinner? Would you serve it at both? Okay. When would you choose?
Well, so I have heard, and maybe this isn't true, but I've heard that a Negroni is meant to be an after-dinner drink. I would not drink this after dinner. I always have it before my pizza. This is like my hooray, it's Friday, made it through another week. We're going to have a great homemade pizza night. I'm not much of a cocktails after dinner person anyway, but I don't think I would ever have a Negroni after dinner. And so for me, my concept of the cocktail is come over, pick your toppings, let's roll out our crusts and have a good time, super informal, not at all stuffy, but strong. Yeah. Shucking off the week, just loosening up and having a good time. But yeah, if I'm going to have a drink after dinner, it would just be a bourbon neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the Negroni for its versatility. I mean, it's complex enough and bitey enough that if you did want to get fancy with it, no one would bat an eye. But if you're in some shorts on your patio, it totally works too.
So true. It really can adapt to either.
Speaking of which, have you ever had a white Negroni?
Oh, yeah. Is it with white port? Am I remembering that right? What is it with?
There's a few different types. The best version I have had, and I'm trying to, let me see if I can remember so it's still the 1-1-1 ratio. It's still gin. And then there is an Italian liqueur called either Bianco Sarti, or there's another version, I think it's Luxardo does it. It's called Bitter Bianco.
Okay.
And that subs for the Campari. And
I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
I want this.
And then the vermouth is Cochi Americano.
Okay.
And that's the best version I have had. And it's like a Negroni, but I feel like if it's above 80 degrees, 30 Celsius, a Negroni's a bit heavy.
Yeah.
But this one, you can go all the way. I mean, you're walking through the desert, someone hands you one, perfect.
Really refreshing.
Really refreshing.
Okay.
I've seen, so rather than the Bianco Sarti, I've used Suze before.
Uh-huh.
And that works, but it's a bit too bitter. And then it's more of a yellow Negroni than a white Negroni at that point. But
okay.
And then, I've used Noilly Prat and some other dry vermouths as well, and those work. There's a bunch of different ways to make it, but that specific ingredient combination seems to have been the one that's worked out the best for me.
So I'm gonna have to reference. We got Death & Co., the cocktail book. Do you have this?
I don't. I've been meaning to pick it up.
It's so much fun.
Oh,
It's like reading, something you could just sit down on the couch with and read. But I'm going to have to look this up in that book because I bet they have something in there about it.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Highly recommend the book though.
Yeah. I'm slowly collecting cocktail books. I tend to be more of a collector of them than a user. I really I have a pretty decent liquor cabinet, and so I like to just go mad scientist with it and come up with stuff. So I tend not to dip into the books nearly as much as I should.
Okay.
But I have them, and so I definitely need that. And there's a book called Imbibe, I know that everyone talks a lot about, that I'm trying to pick up as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I will. That one's been on my list for a while.
So can I ask you? I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
Oh, hey, feel free.
How do you feel about tonic as sort of this goes with everything mixer?
Depends on the tonic.
Ah, okay. Very good.
So something like Fever Tree, I feel does a better job of going with most things. What's the big brand of it? Why am I forgetting this?
Schweppes.
I feel like Schweppes makes a great gin and tonic, especially when you just want a gin and tonic, but it's a bit bitter.
Okay.
Like I feel like it's a tonic's tonic in a way, and so it cuts a little too much with certain things.
Yeah.
Like I would do Fever Tree for a vodka tonic, but I'm not sure I would use Schweppes.
Okay.
Just because I feel like you need that gin combination with the Schweppes to. But that's for my own tastes.
We have gotten really into something that when I first heard about it, I thought that's gross, no way. But on taco night, we have tequila tonic with a ton of lime.
Ooh.
And it's really good.
Oh, I bet that would be, actually.
As sort of an alternative to the margarita. Because you get the sweetness from the tonic water, but you can still the tequila isn't shouted out. Yeah.
What's your go-to tequila here in Switzerland? I know it's a little bit hard to find a good variety.
Yeah, so we're into the Jose Cuervo. It's not Jose Cuervo. No, it's not. What is it? Is it Jose Cuervo? Oh, gosh. I have the bottle in our cabinet. We get it off Galaxis of all places because it's a really good deal.
Nice.
But it's a reposado and it's delicious.
Nice. Yeah, we brought some home from the States last time we went home, but that's been a while, so we're running low. I need to look for a new version.
Well, good tequila is really hard to find here, even like decent tequila. The stuff that they sell in the supermarket with the sombrero as the cap.
Oh, I've seen that one. That scares me.
It's deadly.
Yeah, I would imagine.
You will have like an insta hangover.
Is it deadly in like this is surprisingly easy to drink, but it's garbage, so it wrecks you? Or is it deadly in that you put it in your mouth and you instantly regret it?
And you know you're in trouble. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It is not delicious, and it wrecks you immediately.
I'm always fascinated with liquor, how there are certain things like bourbon, where even a bad bourbon's passable. Like, you can drink it, but a bad tequila or a bad gin, oh, it's just
don't
impossible.
Do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we are in early days of prepping for the coronavirus. There was still some misinformation that it was good to have vodka on hand just in case. And so we got some like truly like
nuclear
worst you've ever heard of. Like you probably never heard of it before. And I think it's going to sit in the cabinet until the end of times because nobody would dare touch it. Unless you have a gash on your leg.
You know what you could use it for? Homemade vanilla.
Oh, there you go.
I've been making that for a few years now, and it's just find some vodka, throw a bunch of vanilla beans in it, let it sit for a month or two.
Makes a great gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Gives a little kick to your cookies, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to Nano for a second. We talked a little bit about prep. We talked a little bit about being in the throes of NaNoWriMo. What would you say are the kind of the best next steps for someone who's done? It's December 1st. You have this thing that you've created or a thing that you're in the process of creating. What do you do with it? What's the next logical course of action?
So for me, that's a multi-part, and you can't have one without the other. The first, and here I am being like, don't follow rules. Burr, burr, burr. Here I have rules. Mm-hmm. One is celebrate. Just step away. Take some time to say, I did it and I'm done. But your story needs to rest and you need to rest. Like you've done a crazy thing for a whole month, and I'm sure that there's a really long list of stuff that you've neglected. Give yourself time to do it and just put it aside, put the story aside. Maybe even for the whole month. December is a crazy month. End of year is always hectic, and for a lot of people it means, celebrating one holiday or another and being with family. We hope we return to that tradition soon, and I think it's totally acceptable to pick it back up in the new year. And then the second part of that is that before you go sharing it around, yes, you can be proud of it, but you must edit it. I am shocked and appalled by how many people are like, well, I wrote a book and I'm just going to go ahead and send it on out.
Yeah.
Nobody will thank you for that because it's going to be rough. My first year ever of Nano, I gave my family, I think, the first 3 chapters because I was so very proud of this book I had written. And they were so sweet about it, but they were like, do you know that your main character's name changes a number of times throughout the chapters? And that's probably the best of it. So it is really important to return and do, I would say, many, many, many passes.
Yeah.
I think editing, like writing, is different for everyone. I do think that there's some wisdom to the way you approach it. If you're interested in efficiency and efficacy, things like you want to do the structural edits first. Don't do the nitty-gritty editing before everything's in its right place, because it's all going to change anyway. But I also think that a lot of figuring those things out happen with doing it, that you may not know. I mean, you can't know what you don't know. And so it takes sort of going into it and feeling it out and figuring it out what works for you, or making those mistakes and realizing you wasted a whole lot of time, drilling into this one part that you ended up taking out anyway. So, but in a nutshell, it's just that I think a lot of people assume or forget how much love it still needs. Before it really sees the light of day and other people's, inboxes.
Yeah, again, I always forget where I hear these nuggets, but somewhere someone had mentioned that it no matter how good you think your first draft is, it's crap compared to what you can make it.
Yeah.
So even if you're the best writer in the world, the best writer in the world's first draft is not as good as their last draft. And so there's always that room for improvement, and never assume that it's. I feel like a lot of people kind of get into the maybe more like musical improv or visual art mentality where it's just like, I have made this, it is my creation, there it is. It's like, yeah, but writing's a little bit different.
Yeah. And you're not somehow forsaking yourself by just cleaning it up a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. It's Paul, you're varnishing your painting, right? Like,
yeah. And it's interesting to me too, because I do think that there's a point at which you can over edit and overthink, that it's almost like you hit this like apex of refinement, and then you just start over worrying it.
Yeah, I always try to tell myself it's once things stop feeling better and they just start feeling different, like that's when someone else needs to look at it. I've done as much as I can for the moment. Someone else needs to kind of push me in a new direction.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. There is no improvement. It's only changes.
Yeah. It's like now the character does this. I don't know why he's doing that now, but that's what he's doing. So here we go. All right, Lindsey, it's last call here in the Indie Pub. Can you give us an indie published book or 2 or 3 or 4 that you think more people need to check out?
Yeah, so my not at all dirty secret is that I love detective fiction and thrillers and crime series. The more the better. And our mutual friend, Jill Pruitt, who publishes as J.J. Marsh, her Beatrice Stubbs series is so delightful. It's so wonderful, and there's so many of them, and she is a genius of self-publishing. So that is my wholehearted recommendation for self-pubbed lit.
Well, and she's, I mean, the backlog of that series, I mean, if someone wanted to dive deep into a series, there's a big chunk of literature there for on there, right? Because I want to say, is it 10 books already almost, or is it even more?
I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
I just got really excited because I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Penny. She writes the Inspector Gamache novels set in Quebec.
I'm not.
Oh, God, I love them so dearly. I love them. They got me through my second pregnancy. But I just found out that in August, her 17th is coming out.
Oh, nice.
And so I don't know if I'm transposing the longevity of her series over the Beatrice Stubbs, but I do think it's more than 10. I mean, there are a lot.
Now, are those more on the thriller end, or is it kind of more of the Poirot episodic? Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Not a cozy, but not the type of. I mean, I've read some series where they're just kind of like gross.
Yeah.
They're not like interesting. They're just terrible people doing terrible things. But this is just. It is satisfying on so many different levels.
Okay, and then so same question, but for any other media, whether it's indie or not.
Okay, so I went way outside. Well, that's not true. I didn't go way outside of books. My first recommendation is music.
Okay.
It is for a band called Make No Bones. Mm-hmm. And it's available on iTunes and Spotify. And I happen to know the artist, one of the artists, a songwriter and singer. And I mean, just incredibly prolific in a way that I think could speak to NaNoWriMo enthusiasts. He has put out an album a year for, I think, 5, maybe 7 years now. And I think when you hear the music, you'll see that it is very much reflective of what's happening in his life at the time. He came to Europe many times, and it's in the music. I mean, he spent a lot of time in Ireland, and so it's almost like music as memoir.
Oh, interesting.
But it is very much story-based, and the lyrics are incredible.
And what so genre? Fun.
I would say folk rock.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he still does. Well, with COVID, not so much. Busking, a lot of busking. And so
Okay.
you really get that vibe of that it is a lot about the vocals and a guy on his guitar.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. And then the other two are very much literary recommendations. I have gone deep into PBS programming.
Okay.
For the uninitiated, that is public broadcasting station.
Oh yeah, I grew up a Nova junkie, so
Oh man, they have so much good stuff. But two of my favorite memoirs from my youth have become television shows, and one is based on Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals, and it's called The Durrells. And I think there were 4 seasons made.
Okay.
And then more recently, it's still ongoing, is All Creatures Great and Small, based on James Herriot's 3-part memoir series about being a veterinarian.
Okay.
And both are fantastic, and it is just the kind of programming I've needed to like heal my withered soul this year. I mean, it's just so wholesome and funny and lovely, and armchair tourism, and I highly recommend, particularly if you read the books.
Is it Masterpiece Theater, or is it just PBS's own series?
They are, yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are my recs, and I really hope that whoever is listening might check one or all of them out, because I have delighted in all of them.
Okay, finally, tell our listeners what you have going on right now and where they can find you and your work.
Sure. So I had the great good luck of re-teaming with NaNoWriMo on my upcoming book, Ready, Set, Memoir. They are offering a memoir thread in Camp NaNoWriMo this year for those memoirists who have been participating in the novel writing challenge, but as nonfiction writers.
Oh, nice.
And so I wrote a workbook in the style of Ready, Set, Novel, which was a NaNoWriMo workbook. And it comes out in May, and it will be available pretty much wherever books are sold. And so are my other books. I was really happy to find on Powell's, the indie champ, but also online for these COVID times, that Ready, Set, Novel is also available there, as is Sleeps with Dogs.
Nice.
Because in a lot of brick and mortars, it's kind of hit or miss. Surely they can special order them, but anyway, they are on Powell's. And I'm not much of a social media person, but LindseyGrantBooks.com is the website where you can find out if I'm doing anything literary.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Indie Pub. If you like what you hear, consider giving us a like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our indie investigations or boozy banter. I've been your host, Jay Rushing, and we'll see you back in the pub next time.